Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Untitled Reviews. This being a show where it's about TV shows that are dramas. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episode of Devils. A great episode. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. Obviously, Massimo has returned from home, and obviously he has, Sophia greeting him, and then immediately is where things start kind of like, all right, because obviously the Italy situation is getting worse and worse, and obviously you see throughout the episode, like all the different news reports and stuff about everything that's going down. So, but Massimo's immediately lying to her, because it's like, oh, how's your dad? It's like, oh yeah, it's the same condition. It's like, why? And immediately you're like, okay, so why aren't you telling her that your dad's dead? But obviously he keeps that lie because he ends up telling Dominic that as well, but it's still like, nah, you're not 100%, you're still not sure why he's doing that. I mean, it makes sense with Dominic because, like, you're not trying to tell Dominic anything because I guess it's like, oh, I guess you don't want Dominic to think you're in an emotional situation, kind of a messed up, that you're kind of messed up emotionally, which technically you are. So it's like, are you really making the best decision right now? But obviously for Massimo, he wants to take down NYL, but obviously... and Dominic, but it's like Dominic's already winning, so the only way he's going to be able to do it is means blowing up his own career. But for him, it's like, I'm finally willing to do it, because obviously before he was still kind of like, I want to probably take down Dominic, but I want to keep my job. Now it's like, no, if it means taking down Dominic, even if like basically he has to, I think, burn a lot of bridges to do it, he's willing to do it. And so they obviously meet with Daniel, and Daniel talks about the fact is that, releasing that file is kind of their ace in the hole, but Massimo's like, you can't do that, because if it comes out what NYL's been doing, it's going to take, not just NYL, but I think what was it, like the German bank was going to go down, it's going to cause a lot of chaos, because this Italy situation's already caused like enough problems. There's a lot of rioting and, issues and violence already, so it's just Massimo's, like, hold off on using like the CDO, and we'll try to go to that reporter from The Guardian, Hillary. We'll go to her again to kind of get this, because obviously Massimo's like, he wants to try and find another way to take him down, and obviously that's through Hillary, which obviously Hillary's like, I'm not going to meet with you because you screwed me over last time, but obviously Massimo comes through it this time too, because at the same, like, what's great about this episode, I mean, to be fair, this kind of flows with every episode of the show, but this episode in particular, there's so many moving damn parts, because especially Massimo, because you're never 100% sure like what side of things, like, it seems like Massimo is genuine about wanting to take down NYL, in particular Dominic, but then he flip-flops so much, and you're just like, is that the con, or is what were you doing before the con? Because it's like, he's like, it's like, are you double agenting this? Are you actually a triple agent? Like, what's going, like, just because the way he handles the whole situation, because obviously Dominic and Alex call him into the office, and it's like, okay, and he's like, yeah, I got to tell you something. I'm dating a woman who is part of Saturnia, but I didn't know at the time. And obviously brings up, oh, they have the CDO and everything. How they get that, I have no idea. So it's like, okay, so now you're playing both sides, and it's like, or are you just playing Dominic? Because obviously you see the situation. I take that bad, but it's just like, because at the end, because part of me was wondering why I was saying, like, because obviously he wants to take down Dominic. He blames Dominic for Ed's death and Carrie's death, but it is still the thing of, he's still playing both sides, trying to take advantage of one to destroy the other. So you're like, he's probably taking advantage of Saturnia, obviously, just to take down Dominic. As Eleanor kind of puts it later on, just straight up, let's call it what it is. Let's call it spade to spade. It's revenge. And so, obviously, things aren't going good for Oliver, because I'm going to be all over the place, so I do apologize. Obviously, he's like, hitting up Eleanor like, hey, maybe we should go grab a coffee. What we did before was fun. And she's like, what about your girlfriend? Which we saw that he went home that night or whatever. I guess he got home late, and he goes to lay down, and his girlfriend opens her eyes. So it's like, maybe she immediately smelled something, or just thought it was kind of weird that he got home late without saying anything. Who knows? But, when it's all said and done, Oliver's in that position where it's like he's trying to take advantage of the NYL thing, but like Alex is like, you give us information, we'll kind of help you out. You scratch our back, we'll scratch yours. Obviously, that's kind of the deal, but you have to bring us information on Massimo first. Obviously, he's been kept out of the loop. Kaleem and Eleanor had that like little fake, well, Eleanor in particular had that fake fight with Massimo, because it's like, all right, Kaleem, I need you to take this computer down there to the icebox, and no, not the icebox, the freezer. And so that whole situation ends up playing out. I think Oliver kind of caught on to it. Maybe not. I don't know. Because later on, he's just like, oh, what happened between you and Massimo? Hey, Colleen, what happened between Eleanor and Massimo? Like, so he did, because he's usually good at reading body language. So he was probably, I mean, maybe that's the reason why Massimo had that set up, because it's like, if Oliver couldn't read her properly, he wouldn't have to worry about it. I mean, I think that was to kind of catch everyone off guard, kind of rattle everyone, keep them a little, like, everyone on their toes about the whole situation. But obviously all that's being offset. I can't remember if that's before or after, like, Massimo met with Hillary. I think this was after. I think that was all after he'd already met with Hillary, and he tells her everything, that basically if things go the way Dominic wants to, it's gonna, because the whole point is to basically screw over the euro to the point, like in particular Italy, so that they can bring down the euro, because every country will try to bail out of the euro and going back to their own currency, and in turn killing the euro. So that's kind of like Dominic's ultimate plan in the grand scheme of things. So, but obviously Hillary's not going to run this story because there's actually no evidence. And obviously this whole thing is a means of getting evidence in the grand scheme of things. So, but then things get complicated in many different regards, because one, Massimo ends up finding out that Daniel is actually like, oh, it's not just the files that you said that he said he was going to get. It's actually, proprietary, like, algorithm stuff that he's stealing too. And you're like, wait, what? So, like, and then I'll start going like, okay, so he wants to make it seem like taking down NYL is some noble cause and stuff like that, but it's like you're getting something out of it as well, because he ends up bringing this up to Sophia, because he thinks like, oh, like, Sophia, you knew what was up, because you're actually the one that suggested I hook this whole laptop situation up to make it so that Daniel could get access to the files. Like, you're the one that suggested it. But it's like, obviously she had no idea, and she even gets it checked out later on, and it's like, what the hell is going on with this? And it turns out Daniel's plan has always been this. Apparently he wants to take down the dollar. Now, I don't know whether he's taking down the dollar because this is 2011, so I don't know whether it's like the dollar is like the most powerful currency, you know, because there's always that phrase of like, oh, the power of the almighty dollar. Granted, I am not, like, God, what would be the words? An economist? I don't know, like, where the dollar stands present day. Definitely didn't know back then, but I don't know whether it's just like take down the dollar, because if you take down the dollar, because I guess the dollar is the most powerful currency, maybe not. Maybe that's going to turn the rest of the world into turmoil. Like, we're getting rid of the euro is one thing, but getting rid of the dollar is another thing entirely. Potentially, you know, I don't know whether it's just that, or whether it's just specifically by taking down the dollar, you screw over the U.S. and maybe just the economy of the U.S. alone. Maybe that's the aim he's going after. But his plan is to basically replace the dollar with cryptocurrency. And it's like, oh, and for Sophia to like be shocked by that, because it's like, because once again, her whole thing is about, you know, doing the right thing. Even her friend Carlos was telling her like, yeah, that's your thing. But of course he wouldn't tell you the truth of what he's up to, because it would go against your own beliefs, you know, because we're about taking down the bad guys, you know, who are getting rich off of people suffering. And it's so interesting too, because he's the one that was so quick to pull the trigger on that whole thing, the CDO, where you had Massimo being like, don't do that yet. The chaos that would be created from it. But now in retrospect, it's like, oh, we now know why he would want to pull that trigger, because it would benefit him in the long run, because it would lead to the chaos he wants, so that the cryptocurrency could, you know, this would be the opportunity for him to bring cryptocurrency into the fold. And once he brings it into the fold and make that be the replacement, you basically rebuild the world back up currency wise with cryptocurrency, and you being kind of like the first one in. When you birth this thing, you will make a killing off of it. That whole situation. So something I'm also curious about is why Daniel is still sitting on the information that's to Sophia that, you know, it's not Dominic that basically led to the situation where her brother killed himself. But it was actually Massimo. He's sitting on that information. We've known for episodes that he knows, but it's like he still has yet to pull that trigger. But I guess it's because he needs Massimo and Sophia as a team. And so for him, it's like, until Massimo is no longer needed, then I'll tell Sophia the truth. But obviously that gets complicated, considering like Sophia's not going to back your plan. Because even later on, it's like, you know, this whole situation, Massimo's planning to run at the end. In fact, they're going to run off together, you know. And then like, Daniel kind of does this thing where it's like, you don't know what, because he's like, oh, you don't know what it's, he doesn't know what it's like to leave everything behind, and he's touching her face and stuff like that. And I'm like, talking about the fact is of living your entire life with always looking over your shoulder. And I was like, is that supposed to be, that's about Massimo, but I'm like, is that actually supposed to be more directly at Sophia? Like, oh, are you, because he's like, oh, I knew the day would come that you'd eventually leave our cause and everything, but he's like, I never knew it was going to come this sooner, in particular that you were going to leave me for a banker. So I don't know whether that was him trying to be like, you go off with Massimo, in particular, you're going to have a target on your back. You're always going to have to live with your, looking over your shoulder. But I also took that as kind of a threat of like, our organization might come after you. It's kind of what it almost seemed like he was implying. Oh, Sophia almost had this look, almost like, was that a threat? Like, she had this look on her face, like, is that a threat? Like, were you threatening me just now? In the way he touched her face and everything, I don't know. Like, I could be just reading too much into it. It could just simply be like, well, my child. Oh, well, and then he immediately kind of went back. Like, it seemed like he was trying to have a sentimental moment. Once again, it comes off a little threatening to me, but, like I said, maybe I've been reading too much into that. But then immediately kind of gets back to work, getting into those files and everything. Sophia also finds out the truth about, oh yeah, your dad's dead. Why didn't you tell me? And he admits, he's like, I didn't want you to grieve for me. He's like, especially with everything going down, it's like, I guess it's like, you need to focus on this. I need to focus on this. None of us needs to take time to grieve. Obviously, we learned last episode, he's a really, really complicated relationship. Well, had a really, really complicated relationship with his dad, and obviously with him being gone now, burned the first boat because of what that boat represented. Like, that's all going to leave you with some, issues, especially like your father's final words. Once again, never outwardly, not even just partially, never once actually apologizing for doing what he did, because for him it's like he justifies it by being, whatever I did, it was for our family so we wouldn't be poor, like whatever price you had to pay. I think he regretted it, but he just can never bring himself to do it, because admitting you were wrong and didn't, it's a lot, it takes a lot to admit when you're wrong sometimes, just because you don't want to admit you're wrong, because if he admitted he was wrong, it'd make him be like, oh, I'm a terrible father. I think that kind of plays a role in it. But Sophia's like, I trust you, but you're going to have to start trusting in me, And I think that's a complicated thing, just because, because obviously Massimo was talking with his dude and he was about cutting ties with everyone. Obviously, Sophia's under the, it's like, oh, it's like, oh, that's the guy I was setting up to, make us disappear. But part of me is like, is Massimo actually lying to her? Like, is he trying to disappear on his own? Because it seemed like in this episode, it seemed like he was kind of alienating people, because it's like, oh, you have to cut ties with your entire life. Family, he's like, well, that's no problem, because every person in his family is gone now. So it's like friends, he's like, we're already kind of working on it. So obviously the Kaleem and Eleanor thing, I think it might be a combination of, Eleanor's not too happy about him doing what he's doing, because it's like working with Daniel. But it's like, yes, but it's like so many people's lives are going to be affected because of this. The fact of the matter, and for her, it's like, oh, now it's like for her, it's kind of heartless of her a little bit, but she still looks at this as like, okay, you want to take down Dominic, you want to do this and that, but don't screw me, Kaleem, and just the entire place over, because you're going to take our jobs. Because they never knew the ins and outs of what he was really doing and who he was. Because anytime they're like, oh, where are you getting this from? He never admitted he was getting it from Saturnia. So... But it's like, it's like Dominic's got blood on his hand, Ed's and Carrie's, and like I said earlier, she's like, it didn't admit it for what it really is, revenge. So it's like it's a lot of self-preservation in this part, because it's just kind of like all of a sudden you're caring about all these other people, because in the past Massimo never did, but maybe the more recent events has kind of awakened a conscience in him when he realizes the effect what he's done in the past, especially because he realizes just how much of an effect something he did back then has had such a tremendous impact on even just one person's life. And he sees, and knows Sophia's story. And it's like, because of stuff that he does, the stuff that NYO continues to do, there are so many people out there with similar stories to Sophia, and he doesn't want to do that anymore, Once again, who's to say what kind of person Massimo would be if his dad hadn't, set that situation up. His need to never be in that situation, to feel vulnerable, always be powerful and never be, I think, the situation with his dad made him feel like, I'm never going to take the fall. I'm always going to be in a powerful, I need all this money, so I'm never in that position where I need to be sacrificed or sacrifice anything in my life. Well, which is sad because technically Carrie was kind of a sacrifice for that life of his. I'm sure that kind of plays a role in what's going through his head about this whole situation with his dad. But obviously what caught me off guard, well, for one, there's the whole situation with Oliver and his girlfriend, and he was kind of snapping at her because obviously he's like, I'm worried about getting fired and stuff like that. And I'm like, because at first I was like, yeah, here we go. You're starting to get so concerned about your job. To be fair, you had an affair. Well, you cheated on your girlfriend. So like I said, you were kind of feeling yourself a little too much, even to the point that you were like, oh, it was nice. Let's keep going. It's not even like you're like, oh, I can't believe that happened. You weren't regretful about it. You're just like, oh, we should do it again. It's like, oh, like he was starting to feel himself, because I think for Oliver, for the first time, he's like in a good position. He's got a really good job. He's able to get the life he's always wanted for him, his girlfriend, his brother, and him. And so I think that's kind of, he's ego tripping and letting it go to his head a little bit. And so I thought like he was texting Eleanor, that Eleanor was going to text him back and say something about like the night they had together, just to be like, okay, I'm not going to do another booty call with you or something like that. And his girlfriend would see that. But in fact, she just smells his shirt. Like she already had her suspicions. Like I said, I don't know whether it's like the moment he got home, she could smell it. And I think that because she specifically smelled his shirt. She smelled one and it didn't match. Then she went to the other one and smelled it. And it's like, okay, don't even try to deny it. For her, it's like this lifestyle, this place we moved into, all the new clothes. She's like, I never asked for it. The only thing I ever asked for was knowing that you loved me. And now obviously that's being brought into question. And he's like, oh, this is, and she ends up leaving, so life is kind of crumbling on that front. Also on the job front, because he can't get any information from anyone, because Kaleem caught him like, oh, you're trying to hack into my stuff? Or he's like, yeah, you're mistaken. He's like, who do you think you're up against? He's trying to get information from Massimo, and Massimo's like, yeah, I'm not telling you jack shit. So that kind of screws him over. But then Eleanor, at first you're like, okay, so Eleanor's trying to get back at Massimo because she's trying to, keep her own job security, so stop Massimo from doing what he's doing. I'm like, but still, I don't. And then, Oliver goes off and tells Dominic. Then at the same time, Massimo comes up at the same time, and they're meeting eye to eye, him and Oliver, and he sees like, oh, so you definitely betrayed me, Oliver. And Oliver has that guilty look in his eye, like, damn it, shit, because it's like Massimo did kind of get him in this job and position, but it's like you are screwing him over now. But then, like, Massimo's trying to play it off like, yeah, I have no idea who gave that information to Daniel. The fact of the matter is, I'm just bringing it to you now. It wasn't my laptop. Well, whose laptop was it? Oh, and now Paul gets deduced. It's like, oh, it's almost like a little middle finger. I mean, someone had to take the fall, and I guess they're like, well, fuck Paul. Paul came in here, getting a higher position, actually replacing Massimo. And, it's like, it was his way of being a dick, of getting back at Massimo for Massimo firing him. It's like, well, you kind of tried to screw over Massimo, and he screwed you over for, but it's like, Paul got the boot. Eleanor is like, wow, I was so certain it was Massimo. I guess it was Paul's laptop the entire time. So it's like, okay, so she gave that information to Oliver knowing what the plan was. So it's like, okay. Because like that whole Eleanor and him conversation, like that, the second one, the first one, obviously the fake argument, but the second one was real. But it still seemed like regardless of everything, she was still on his side. Like she is still loyal to Massimo, because she had brought it up like, we've kind of like been by your side through everything. So that's why I thought was kind of interesting for her to still, at the end of the day, still back him up, because I guess despite everything, she is still loyal to him, because I guess it's like him doing all this is going to jeopardize his situation, not necessarily theirs. But it screws over Oliver because he just brought Dominic some information. Even he was like, I can't prove it, that Massimo's connected to this whole Daniel situation. I'd skipped over it, in the conversation, but I want to circle back and kind of talk a little bit about the whole Nia situation. Like the the Nina situation is interesting. Is it Nia or Nia? It's Nina, right? Her whole situation's interesting because obviously it seems like she cares about Massimo. Obviously they had their affair and everything, but like her and Dominic are in a better place. But at the same time, it's like, it seems like she's a lot more accepting now of who Dominic is. I guess ever since like that episode about their son, I think like a lot of that healing took place and like they're in a better place. But it's kind of like she's like it's kind of sad because she's like Massimo's so much like you, and he's like yeah, but this will be over soon and stuff like that. And so she has this look where I guess she's still concerned about Massimo because she does care, even though she tried to give him a warning at the beginning of the episode at the season. But I guess it's like, you know, it's already too late. You're too much like him anyway, so it's kind of sad you have to destroy each other. But I don't know whether she's really like 100% on Dominic's side or whether there is still that part of her that's like trying to look out for Massimo because she tried to help him out at one point in time. But you know, that's the thing. Like I feel like that's not 100% clear at the end of this episode. It's where a lot of people's allegiances are. I think that's going to be the most complicated part to this. Because we have Sophia turning on Daniel because, you know, it's like, you set this all up. You're going to get rich and that's not what we set out to do. But, you know, it's like, look at all the violence that's going to come about because of what you're about to do. And he's like, well, violence was always going to be a thing. You know, it's just kind of the price to pay for. In his mind, it is, you know, this revolution he's starting, which she's like, this isn't, I forgot the word she used, but she was like, this is anarchy, you know? So what was interesting though is, it works out for him because he's like, oh, I've kind of got everything. Cause she had showed up there to get, I guess, just to get the CDO, so that he wouldn't have that. So because the CDO is going to be the trigger he needs to kind of destroy everything and then, you know, do his cryptocurrency thing. But, he was so unapologetic about it. And obviously this hurts her so much, especially turning on him because, you know, he took her in. He was a mentor, probably like a father, and had their complicated relationship. So it might not even just be fatherly, but it's like he took her in and obviously he means the world to her. She believed in him so much. And to find out this person you idolized isn't who you thought they were. Because even she was like, you're worse than Dominic doing what you're doing. Because at least Dominic isn't trying to burn the entire world doing what he's doing. And you, granted, yes, he's doing shitty stuff and he's burning certain places, but he's not about to, you know, some men just want to watch the world burn, right? So, obviously I was thinking of, Dark Knight when I was was that from, yeah, it was from Dark Knight, but it was also interesting, because I was listening to some of their older songs. There's an Icy Stars song that references that. Was it NZT48? Is that the song? It's something like that. I always forget the song's title. Regardless, I'm going on a huge tangent. Yeah, that just came to my mind, but it's like she ended up, I guess, cooperating with the cops. She's there during the bust, so it's like, I guess this is going to be her way, kind of get out of jail free card type of situation. And it's like, I guess it's like, oh, I'm gonna have to burn this bridge as long as it means stopping Daniel. It's fine. And at the end of it, you know, me and Massimo will get away. I'm assuming that Daniel is going to present the truth to Sophia, being like, oh, you think it's Dominic that screwed your life over, led to your brother's death? It's like, no, it was actually Massimo. He's been using you in the entire time. So that's going to make her probably question everything between her and Massimo, because it's like, oh, he knew the entire time. Every time I explained why I was doing this, but he kept stringing me along because it would help him in the long run. So that bridge might get burned over the course of, you know, the future. I don't know. Massimo gets fired because Dominic's tired of, like, you know, it's like, you've been playing all these moves and stuff like that. You told me to trust you. And he's like, I put my trust in you again and you manipulated me. And he was just kind of like, you're done. Now you literally have nowhere to run or turn to. And Massimo's like, well, we'll have to wait and see. And I'm like, okay, it seems like he might still have another ace in the hole with this situation. Maybe not. But, obviously he gets escorted out. So, what I thought was interesting, though, is like, if you notice, they focus on his Dominic's son's picture in the back, and I'm like, I didn't know whether that was Massimo about, because like the way he was looking, like he was about to say something, so I thought he was going to say something in relation to John, but because that is Dominic's son's name, right? Yeah. I thought I was going to say something in relation to that, but he never did. So I don't know whether he was just holding his tongue or whether that was just a camera focusing. Because obviously Dominic at first was looking down. He wouldn't even look Massimo in the eyes. And maybe that's what Massimo was like, oh, no, you're going to do this. You're going for the throat. Like, look at me while you're doing it. Oh, you can't? All right, fine. Let your people escort me out the building. So that's a lot of, interesting stuff and developments to keep in mind. Next week's episode is the season finale, this time for sure, just because I said that up at episode 8 if you were unaware. But yeah, episode 10, the next episode, is the season finale. So it's going to be interesting to see how this season close out, how these storylines close out, what's going to be, resolved, what's going to be left unresolved. A lot of questions on that front. I'm curious to see where all this takes us in the season finale. But really, that's all I'm going to talk about. So the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.